Hey, I'm Latif with BevNET. I'm here with John Craven. We're at the 2016 Natural Products Expo West show here in Anaheim, California, and we're going to be talking about cold-pressed juice trends that we're seeing here at the show. John, a lot's changed since we did this video at the show last year. Last year we didn't see a naked pressed product. You didn't see Bolthouse Farms' 1915 product. You didn't see Evolution Fresh's 11-ounce line. All those playing at that $4 price point.
Yeah, I mean, the landscape has obviously changed significantly, and Coke having ownership in Suja as well. The price point has really changed the landscape such that a lot of the startup brands and some of the brands that have been out there are kind of changing their focus a bit out of necessity, I think.
Yeah, you're starting to see in terms of label hierarchy, organic kind of taking that top tier over HPP, over cold pressed. Brands that we talk to, a lot of them are saying, look, HPP, even at this point, consumers are not understanding what it is, and the level of education required to get people to that understanding of what HPP is all about is just not worth it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, they tried, and last year we talked to a lot of companies that were, if you remember, trying to brand, cold pressed, cold pressured, it was on the label front and center, and I think at this point, I guess the reality is just that there's a bigger opportunity out there for an organic, good for you juice. And that's something that can chip away from some of the traditional juices that are out there. So it's kind of almost like not necessary to talk about it at this point, right?
Right. The organic thing is really rising to the top.
And people get that.
Exactly. And Suja did that with their Essentials line. They actually got rid of the word Essentials and just called it Suja Organic. Daily Greens did a revamp of their 12-ounce line too, putting that organic messaging way higher on the top of the bottle.
Definitely. And I mean, I think that's something that, if you want to be national, that's kind of what the focus is going to be at this point. As for everyone else, I mean, it's pretty interesting that at this point there seems to be much more of almost a regional focus.
Right.
We didn't really hear of a lot of brands that are talking about, trying to go national at this point. So
yeah,
a little different.
Right. I mean, some of these regional brands are looking for spots where they can get some traction, retail and distribution that are not necessarily the most traditional routes for cold pressed juice, but they are finding some room. We talked to Lumi, we talked to Forager, we talked to Juicy. All these brands had focused their efforts not so much on a national play, but finding those spots where they can really excel on a regional and then sort of non-traditional retail basis.
Yeah, I think it's something, again, I mean, these brands are looking for different ways to go to market, build their brand that's not, going national in Whole Foods or going, into some big box retailer, things that for companies that are still in those formative years, they might not have the capital to do or it's too risky.
Right. And there is some innovation that's still happening quite a bit, actually, in terms of new ingredients and blending juices with things like probiotics and plant-based protein. We saw both of those in Love Grace's new line, which has 20 grams of protein and a bunch of probiotics.
Yeah, it's an interesting, value proposition. I think it's one that's, a lot more complicated than the original kind of, cold pressed juice that was more about, it's got this much kale and apples. These are things that I think take a little more, education and communication. So to some extent, it's interesting that, they've kind of replaced the whole discussion of HPP and cold pressed with something else that might, may or may not be as equally complicated, but it's definitely on trend at least.
Right.
Protein, plant-based protein in particular, and probiotics are something that we've been seeing in various forms for years here. I think these companies have finally gotten to the point where they've actually been able to put those ingredients in and, maintain the flavor that they want. Doesn't have that sort of bitter, off taste that I feel like every time you tried a pea protein drink, for example, just didn't taste that good.
Right. You're also seeing some juice offshoot plays as well. Honey Drop introduced their line of lemonades, which is a little bit more of a mainstream-friendly kind of product. Evolution Fresh introduced a couple new lemonades, all sort of extending what juice can be for their brands.
And juice served here in LA.
Exactly, juice served here as well. And then you're also seeing some sort of enhanced water plays. Suja with their probiotic waters, and even Uncle Matt's getting into that with their new probiotic-infused juice, enhanced water.
Yeah, I think it's something that, for Uncle Matt's, I know we've asked them a ton about HPP and somewhere on their radar. I think that's an interesting way to kind of get in the game with something that, is on trend, it's lower calorie, again, has that functional benefit. I think they've done a really nice job with it.
I think so too, yeah. All right, that's all we have for the cold pressed juice category here at Natural Products Expo West, but stay tuned for much more coverage from the show.